My story begins in the early year of 2012. EVE Online had an impact on me. Even to this day, I still play. At first I wanted to become one of the greatest mining guru out there. I aspire about industry and manufacturing alike. This was all I dreamed of. For years I grew into this mechanized and hardcore foraging champion. My empire of minerals. I was attracted by the sandbox universe, the ability to craft and manufacture spaceships. After a few years into this life, I've made some good friends that I band up with. They called themselves the Genesis Space Expedition 1. We all have the same ideologies and we enjoyed mining and chatting together. From the field to the refineries to the manufacturing plant, we grew our wallets. Over time we also grew in numbers. The corporation saw new recruits and I became some sort of mining advisor. I was instructed to teach them the way we operated and also to help the corp mine their moon and keep the refineries working, but also to ensure that the corp income was being kept flowing in. Everything was good, and money was flowing like never before. But miners aren't warriors. Some Ukrainian corps saw us as a threat. Turns out the ships we were building were used against them, and a small war started. This small two-sided war only lasted for 2 months. It was also the first time in my history that I fought. Fencing pandas were ruthless and cunning pilots of themselves. They always came up with new tactics we've never seen. For example, this one time we had 3 battleships on field and they came with 1 maelstrom. A single battleship against 3, what hope did he had? It was hull tank and was repairing its armor faster than we could kill it. Above this 2 Balgorn came in system, with massive nuts capabilities. When they landed, they were sucking the cap out of our battleship and one by one we were losing them. Eventually a truce was made between us. But as soon as this war was ending, a fucking bigger one was on the horizons. This time it came from an entire group of alliances. At the time 100 players to me was considered a lot. A total of 7 alliances declared war on a single corporation that resided on a high-sec island in the middle of buckfuck nowhere. We had top 30 active players in the corporation. With no allies for ourselves, we didn't know what the fuck to do. The events that follow is but a goddamn miracle. An alliance by the name of Phoenix Naval Systems came to our rescue. They asked us to join their alliance to allow them to take part in the war. They started training us into militia. But they had tricks up their sleeves for the upcoming deployment. There was a fight that occurred in one of the neighboring low-sec system. We kind of knew something was off because they were baiting us outside the island. We didn't know what was coming though. As we were ordered to follow them 2 low-sec deep, upon arrival to the second gate. "Hold cloak!" an FC shouted. "When you guys decloak, you will approach this target, shoot everything on it and move to the next one." As we started to move towards this Scorpion, a Sino opened up on field. The presence of enemy capital-sized ships was now revealed. As we started to panic, Onslaught, our FC remained calm and with a relaxed voice said, "The Sino is lit!" A dozen ally capital ships came into play out of nowhere. We fought against the offenders and claimed the victory. Against incredible odds, we won the battle. But that was by sheer luck, and by the helping hands of Phoenix Naval Systems. In those months I learned how to fight and follow instruction. Being a miner is great and all, but I need to fight back as well. If you can't defend your land, why even have land in the first place? After the war, I went away for a few months. And as soon as I came back, we got betrayed. The CEO of our corp turned his back on us, and was stealing the corp from its hard work. That dug a deep trenches between us. We were completely dried up. Our structures ran out of fuel. We were bleeding members and thus marking the end of our empire we've spent many years to build on our island. Some directors left to create their own corp, others left to join the Alliance of Phoenix. My social circle was diminishing and fast. I took a step back and went into low sec for a year to think about what was my next step. Turns out I went to the wrong place. By the end of 2017, a person, by the name of Sorgan, saw my thirst for mining and how driven I was. He invited me to come and hang out with them in wormhole space. A brand new world was opening before my eyes. New activities, new things to learn. This was increasing my knowledge of the game itself. But most importantly, everything here was making me big money. From 2018 to 2019 I've been in WH. In that time I spent months and weeks refining my probing skills and learning what risk and rewards truly meant. I was making so much that I had multiple structures. A Tatara, 3 Athenors, an Asbel and a fort. In the upcoming year, I've spent most of my time mining, building and selling up my products, until the update that was coming. I was hyped to see what CCP was announcing for the WH Society. Turns out it was only the worst possible thing that could happen to our little group. When I saw what was coming I was able to sell most of my structures, but eventually with those changes we got easily evicted, our alliance shattered. I won't go into details of the changes. Basically it became impossible for small groups to live in wormholes. After what happened, I lost all my friends, and yet again I went to the shadows to learn from what went wrong. In exile I must go. After a few months out of wormholes, I was back to restarting the grind in HiSec. My goal was simple: make connections and good clients for my dreads that I was building in a nearby system. I got approached by a CEO of a corporation that lives in Null. He saw I was a motivated man that enjoys multi-boxing mining vessels, and he was trying to learn how I made money, and so we talk. We talked for a few days in a row. He was trying to convince me to join this alliance that was about to go to a massive war, and industrialists like me was greatly valued. So after a few shots of convincing me, I finally folded and joined in. And I started to fly under the banner of Mayhem in the Alliance of Brave Collective. At first when I joined in, I wasn't too comfortable in NullSec. Funny enough, it was in the midst of Blackout that I came into Null. From the year I joined there was a massive war against the Imperium. At the time goons were enemies to all, since they were the biggest threat to everyone in the game. The EVE community called this war the war that would end all wars. During that time, I wasn't sure about what was going on. Fast forward a few months later, in the late summer of 2021 the war ended, and we lost. We were faced to evacuate our homes. As you all know by now, Legacy got destroyed. Brave was forced to move north, and I followed. Uncertain times was ahead of us all. I went back to HiSec to recuperate some assets and blueprints that got scattered across the southern borders. It took me months to recover from this, as I rejoined with the rest of my brothers in Germinate. All I saw in this was demoralizing times for all the brave Nubro. We were exhausted, frustrated, and we were uncertain for the survivability of Brave. This made many corporation and players leave the Alliance and the game itself. This was the first time in EVE that I felt the need to do something. I wanted to bring light in the darkness, for the new players of EVE and for Brave. I started a new journey. I will abandon all my industrial and mining capabilities and rebuilt myself to become a true warrior. I got trained into the dark art of Black Ops. I got trained into a fierce tackle pilot. I was capable of jamming foes from afar inside my Blackbird. I've learned how to heal other players in battle. I took the time we spent in Germinate not to make money, but to grow my combat capabilities, and to become a good pilot. I was trained by Harold Magnuson, one of the most valued dojo sensei in all Brave. I was lucky enough to be under his wing for a few battles as well. At the end of September 2021, we were finally announced where we were going next. Pureblind, also known as Thunderdome. When started our moving operations, we were told we would get our own space. Not everyone liked this idea though. My corporation leadership didn't like this at all. They chose to leave the Brave Collective to go join the Imperium. But I was on a mission, for the new players and for Brave itself. So before they knew it, I chose my new corp, Unsung Heroes. Going back to the conquering of Pureblind, we would start our conquest from a single fort in NPC NullSec, without any allies, nor strings attached to us. Dunkdinkle said, "We will move forward as independent. We will have no allies to aid us conquer this hostile space." By the end of October, we started the campaign against Flying Dangerous. We started by taking the Q5211 system and expanded from there. I remember how we would joke around and say that Q52 was the radio on New Eden. Thank you for listening to Q52 Radio. We had great time fighting for that system. But what we believed was going to be easy to push aside for a new home became more difficult with their allies and friends. Banderlags, Test Alliance, Snuffed Out and other groups were here. As we fought over territories, we slowly made progress, but in the meantime I started flying a special type of ship. As my knowledge for tackle grew and my motivation itself became so overwhelming, I went into the path of heavy tackle. Interdictus. Not any interdictor though, the majestic flycatcher. These destroyer-sized ship, with amazing speed, agility and resistance, are the size of a house. I was mesmerized by these type of ships. The idea that you can tackle entire fleets with these ships was just as fascinating than their abilities themselves. They are capable of using an interdiction sphere launcher. These specialized modules on ships allows them to launch a sphere that prevents any ship within the radius to warp away. These spheres, or as we call them, bubbles, also prevent warping in a direct line of 500 kilometers impossible. In theory, it could make an escape almost impossible. There is also a multitude of tactics to be used with those ships, and I've learned those tactics through fleet commanders only. Screening, water boating, gate guards, pipe bombing, fort wrapping, dragging and many more advanced tactics. It was funny to see that under a year, I became a competent pilot. But most importantly, I became more confident, and without knowing it, I was becoming the motivational hero for Brave to move forward into the night. Without realizing it, I was pulling everything, but this came with a heavy price. In my real life, outside of Eve, I believe that if you truly want something to change, you have to become the source of this change. I brought this philosophy with me in the game as well. Slowly I was bringing my ideas of the real world into the game, and this was allowing me to become the most notorious dictator pilot of that time. An FC once said, "When Snuffed Out makes inline bubbles with your dictator pilot, you know he's good." As we continue our push into Pure Land, I was making my push to keep Brave Fire alive. But in the meantime, something was starting to kill us. Cloaky Campers. After fighting and winning against Flying Dangerous, we turn our eyes on Banderlags, a Russian alliance. They were perhaps our best rivals so far. Equal in numbers, motivated and dedicated pilot amongst their ranks, they also shared a similar way of knowledge. Both Banders and Brave were mostly composed of new bro and veteran players. Brave and Banderlags were the perfect match for each other. But Banders had something that Brave didn't have. Cloaky campers everywhere, to discourage players from making money. At the same time, a more friendlier alliance, Toilet Paper, folded, and went into low sec. They gave all their territories to Brave and left, which meant that Cloaky campers were now in 3 constellation of Brave space. In Eve, Cloaky campers are players that cloaks up in a system, stalk their prey until they are comfortable enough, and then they drop on them. It is basically the equivalent of submarines during World War II. Once they find a prey, they decloak, tackle them, open a sino, and their allies comes in, kill the target, and then leaves into the shadows. But there was an issue. Brave newer members and crabbers weren't able to mine or rat without being drop on. Even myself was becoming a high-value target to those Russians droppers. In the mid-December 2021, me and another player by the name of Izakbar started theory crafting about catching those cloaky eyes. We noticed that they never logged off, and they would log on back in after downtime of the servers every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We started to make some approach to CCP, reporting them for using a scripted program. But no one was listening to us. To make matters worse, some players weren't logging in anymore. The logic of having those scripts running, 1 per system in 3 constellation, was removing the game for 10 players per system. So we had to do something. And we came up with a brilliant plan. We started to hunt cloaky campers. This was the high-tier hunting. There is no higher-tier hunting that you can do in Eve. This type of hunt demands patience, skills, knowledge, coordination, recon pilots, exceptional tackle pilots, and old-school communication. In other words, we would hunt as groups without saying a single word. We were the Batmans in the night, as you will. By the end of the year we tested the theory, and we decided to start it on the live server. Shattered Armor, our military director, made us a special interest group. and glamping was born. This turned out to be so successful that in February, Brave saw a record of income in their revenue for the first time since the war against the Imperium. Little did they know that in the background, the cleanup crew was there working and protecting them. We work so hard that at some point, there is a week where I've spent around 55 hours hunting in the game, including my 40 hours a week job in the construction. But that weekend something was different. I didn't catch any target, and I was completely pissed off. This felt like failing. I took a step away from the game for a day. When I came back, I didn't want to hunt, just wanted to make some money and relax. But I noticed something on my D-scan. A Nemesis uncloak without any mobile observatories in the system. As soon as I noticed, I warped to the nearest station, docked my ship, switched pod and ship, and poof, the ship was off D-scan. But you have to remember, I multi-boxed 6 characters at once. I decided to send out all my characters in 6 different systems, and I would descan all of them to timestamp if they decloak. At first, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. There must be an explanation to this. It's either that or I'm going crazy. Either way, I'll reach the bottom of this. While I was watching all my descan, I was also going silent mode on comms, and Brave members knew that I figured something out. When Involves goes silent, you know that he's on to something. As expected, 15 minutes later, Mrs. Nif decloak and recloak her ship. I was so excited of my discoveries that I started using their scripts against them. And down goes one, and then another. It became so easy killing them, I started inviting my corpmates to kill them with me. That's when the brightest idea came from a bright mind, Kusto Freelak, father of the Ram Ranch. He opened up comms and said, "Film those fuckers! Now we have the proof that they are botting, and send that shit to CCP." Not only I've sent that to CCP, but I also put it up on YouTube, to let others know, players like me, that hunt spots exist. I was awarded a decoration. CCP acknowledged and banned the accounts. After these accounts got banned, Banderlogs demanded peace, and the war came to an end. Banderlogs was forced to sign a non-invasion pact with Brave. EL8 was exchanged for BDV3 in the aftermath of this cloaky campaign. We were finally home, and at peace. After all my hard work, I was able to secure a safe haven for the new bro. This story is to show that one player can make all the difference. Doesn't matter where you're from. What matters is what's in front of you, what you fight for, and the motivation that you bring in with you.